All right, I wanted to review the story, Faith Cure Man. I'm going to open it up. I'm going to open up my copy of the story with my underlines. You also have your copy of the story with your underlines and 5 comments. So I will be grading those comments. All I'm looking for is you to make 5 interesting comments on the story. You could comment on the things that I talk about, or you could comment on anything you want that you find interesting. So I'm opening up my copy of the story, The Faith Cure Man by Paul Lawrence Dunbar. Um, Now, I wanted to point out to you the author of the story, this guy named Paul Lawrence Dunbar. He was the son of former slaves and a prominent black novelist and poet. That means that people knew of him. He was famous to some extent, and he wrote novels, which are books and poems. All right. So, what I wanted to point out is that we have the author, and then when you look at the story, you do not see the author himself in the story. He tells the story from the point of view of being the author, but being invisible. So he says, in the close room at the top of the old tenement house, little Lucy lay wasting away with a relentless disease. So he describes little Lucy, but he doesn't say, I see little Lucy. The doctor had said at the beginning of the winter that she should not live. Now he said that he could do no more for her except to ease the few days that remained for the child. But Martha Benson would not believe him. Notice the way there is no intrusion of the author. The author does not say, but I noticed that Martha Benson wouldn't believe him. Right? So the author is there, but in the background so far that we cannot even see him. Right? We can see his attitudes and opinions through what he says, but we cannot see him. This point of view, where the author is invisible and talking about little Lucy and she could not live, and the doctor, and he said, and Martha Benson, and she was confident. Talking about it in this is called third person point of view. All right? It's as if you took your pronouns and you figured out first person was I, second person was you, and third person is he, she. All right? So this is the third person point of view. If you were telling a story from the first person, you would say, I think hope is tenacious. I think it goes on living. I walk to the top of the stairs and I see little Lucy wasting there. The doctor says to me that at the beginning of winter, all right, so you would have I and me and my all in the story, because as the narrator, you would put yourself in the story in the first person as if you were experiencing it. I saw this and I felt that. That's common to write a story from the first person point of view. The narrator is in the story. It is very uncommon to hear the second point of view. You. Very uncommon way of writing a story. People tell stories that way, but they very rarely write them that way. So you wouldn't say, you get to the top of the stairs and you see little Lucy wasting away, and the doctor says to you at the beginning of winter she couldn't live, and now he tells you that he can do no more for her. But you would not believe him. Okay, it's very uncommon that they put you into a story. Um, Also, when you're writing your essays, it is ill-advised to put you into the story, into your essays. Most of your essays should be written in the third person, not I and not you, but he, she. All right. So you notice that we have the author telling this story. He's talking about this main character, Martha Benson, and the daughter, and the main character goes to the mission home and listens to the preacher. So we can already tell that she worships. We know she's religious, and then we get her talking, and the author decides to try to write the way that she talks in dialect, with her accent, with the way she talks, with the way that she pronounces words. So the character, Martha Benson, says, "Po, little lammy," she said to her child, "Mammy's little gal bound to get well. Mammy's gonna send her out in the country when the spring comes, where she can roll in the grass and pick flowers." Uh, so what the author has decided is that she was going to give, he's going to give this character an accent, and we might go back to who wrote the story, Paul Laurence Dunbar, son of a former slave. And we might think that what has happened, if we know a little bit about history, what happened was the slaves in the South, mostly in the South where there was a lot of farming to be done, there were slaves in the South. And when they were emancipated, they needed work and left the farms looking for work, and they went north. Right? And they came up where the factories were in the north, and they got jobs, and they were living in these places like this old tenement house, which were houses that were converted into apartments, and they would squeeze, 10 different apartments into a house, little tiny apartments with little kitchens, or maybe just a stove just stuck in the middle of the room. And they were not very luxurious. In fact, they ended up being seen as, like slums, really bad places to live. Too many people squeezed in together. So what happened is the Southerners left the farms, the black Southerners left the farms and moved north to get jobs. So maybe that's what the author is doing with this dialect. Maybe the author is showing that this woman, Martha Benson, was had a Southern dialect, and she brought it with her up north. But we don't really know for sure. I'm guessing, because a lot of times with a narrator you have to guess. They don't tell you. Okay, so the woman wants her child to get better, and what does she do? She goes to the faith cure man. So not only is she religious, but she apparently has beliefs in other things that you can't see. So she goes to the faith cure man, and the narrator says something interesting. The narrator says the only religion she had ever known, the wild, emotional religion of most of her race, which is interesting because we know the author is a black man. He's writing about a black woman being overly emotional about her religion. So there is a judgment put on there from his point. And as the story goes on, we do see the faith cure man charging money. Okay, we do we do see the faith cure man giving her an elixir, liquefied prayer and faith. And as the reader, we're having trouble believing that she's buying this stuff, that she's really into it. She tastes it. It tastes like sweetened water, but she knew it was not and had no doubt of its virtues. We know, as the readers, we know it's just sweetened water, but she doesn't. So it's interesting that the narrator is giving us this information about her and about her self-delusion. All right. On the whole time we are getting the information, but the Martha doesn't get it. In fact, by the time she gets to the end, and her daughter dies, she says, "Dead, dead! Oh my God, give me back my child! Oh, don't I believe you enough?" Right. So she's actually doubting herself whether she didn't believe enough, and it was her faith that was too weak to save her child. So what I wanted you guys to notice was the point of view of the story, and the fact that the author himself put his ideas into the story. He kind of hid them because he's a invisible narrator, but you can see it through how he described things and all the information that he made sure to give you as a reader. So when you go to the point of view questionnaire, there's a review of the concept of point of view. Remember, the point of view is the first person, where you tell the story from I, and the second person, where you tell the story as if you are in the story, and then the third person, which is the most common, you say he and she, and the narrator can stand way back and be invisible if he chooses to. So I reviewed the point of view on a little video, and then there's a Google form I want you to fill out. Okay, a little quiz. And there's also a quiz on the story itself. Okay, the quiz asks, if you have read the story, what happened in the story, and it talks about the narrator and the point of view. So if you're not happy with your scores on any of these, they are still open. You can go back in and retake them. But that is all I have for you today. I'm going to stop the recording. Maybe. I just clicked on it, but it didn't do anything. There we go.